There is a newspaper on a table somewhere in your memory. Your grandfather's kitchen, a waiting room, a front porch where someone read without looking up when you arrived. You remember the smell of it, the ink on your fingers when you turn the pages, the particular weight of it, substantial in a way that a screen is not. What you do not remember, because nobody told you, is the man who built it. Not wrote it, built it. Letter by letter, line by line, column by column, every word you read in that newspaper was placed by hand into a wooden frame by a craftsman who held the entire edition in his memory before it existed on the page. His name was the compositor. And what he could do with a stick of type and a case of lead letters no machine could replicate for the first 400 years of printing. The first movable type in Europe was cast by Johannes Gutenberg in Mainz, Germany, around 1450. Gutenberg did not invent printing. Block printing from carved wooden surfaces had existed in China and Korea for centuries. What Gutenberg invented was the system. Individual letters cast in metal, each one identical, that could be assembled into words and lines and pages, printed, then disassembled and reassembled into a different page. The same letters that printed the first page of a Bible could, after printing, be redistributed and used to print the second page. That reusability was the revolution. The technology spread from Mainz across Europe within 20 years. By 1500, printing presses were operating in more than 250 European cities. By 1600, the printed book had transformed European intellectual life in ways that historians are still mapping. But the technology that drove all of it, the hand setting of individual metal type, did not change in any fundamental way for 400 years. From Gutenberg in 1450 to Ottmar Mergenthaler in 1886, every piece of printed matter in the Western world was set by human hands. Letter by letter. A master compositor named James Donahue set type for the New York Tribune for 31 years, beginning in 1851. He set the Tribune's coverage of the Civil War. He set the Tribune's coverage of Lincoln's assassination. He set the paper's response to the Great Chicago Fire. He set it all by hand. Here is what that demanded. The compositor stood at a type case, a shallow wooden tray divided into compartments, each compartment holding the cast lead sorts for one letter, one punctuation mark, one space. The layout of the case was not alphabetical. It was arranged by frequency of use. The letters that appeared most often in English text, E, T, O, I, N, occupied the compartments closest to the compositor's dominant hand. A trained compositor did not look at the case while he worked. He reached into the correct compartment by memory and by the muscle memory of 10,000 previous reaches. His eyes were on the manuscript copy in front of him. His hand moved to the case and back to the composing stick, a small adjustable metal holder in his other hand, without his gaze leaving the text he was setting. The composing stick held one line of type at a time. The compositor set each letter in sequence, reading left to right from his copy, but placing the letters right to left in the stick, because the type had to be mirror image to print correctly. He read forward and set backward simultaneously, a cognitive operation that took months to learn and years to do at speed. Between letters, he inserted spaces. The spaces were not uniform. The compositor adjusted the spacing between words to justify each line, to make it fill the column width exactly from edge to edge. He did this by eye and by feel, distributing the spacing across the line so that no gap was noticeably larger than any other. A poorly justified line had rivers, vertical channels of white space that ran down a column of text and pulled the eye away from the words. A well-justified line had none. The text sat on the page as an even gray mass, readable, uninterrupted, the white space invisible because it was perfectly distributed. James Donahue could set a justified line in 30 seconds. A trained compositor at full speed set approximately 1,000 letters per hour. A daily newspaper required hundreds of thousands of letters. The composing room of a major newspaper employed dozens of compositors working simultaneously. The noise was the scratch of type being placed into sticks and sticks being emptied into galleys, constant, rhythmic, and to a visitor, incomprehensible. To the compositors, it was the sound of language being built. In 1886, a German immigrant watchmaker named Ottmar Mergenthaler demonstrated a machine to a group of newspaper publishers in New York. The machine cast an entire line of type at once from molten lead, triggered by a keyboard that looked like a typewriter. The operator typed. The machine cast. The finished line dropped into a galley ready for printing. When the line had been printed, it was melted back down and recast for the next edition. No individual sorts, no composing stick, no case of handset letters. Whitelaw Reid, publisher of the New York Tribune, watched the demonstration. He turned to the men standing next to him and said a sentence that has been recorded in multiple accounts of the day. He said, "Ottmar, you have done it. This is a linotype." The machine was named the linotype. Within 10 years, linotype machines were operating in every major newspaper composing room in America and Europe. Within 20 years, hand compositors at daily newspapers were an endangered profession. The men who had set type by hand for 30 years watched operators younger than their apprenticeships replace them at a keyboard. The Tribune's composing room, where James Donahue had set Lincoln's assassination coverage letter by letter, was retrofitted with linotype machines in 1890. Donahue retired the following year. He was 53 years old. Here is what the linotype could not do. A linotype operator typed at a keyboard and the machine cast what he typed. If he typed a wrong letter, the machine cast a wrong letter. Correction required recasting the entire line. A hand compositor who placed a wrong letter reached into his stick and removed it. The correction took 3 seconds. More significantly, a hand compositor read the text as he set it. He was a craftsman who understood language, who caught errors in the manuscript copy, who could query a word that seemed wrong before it became a printed mistake that 10,000 readers would see. The linotype operator was a keyboard operator. His relationship to the text was mechanical rather than intellectual. The craft of composition, the judgment about spacing, the eye for the justified line, the engagement with the language being set, existed in the hand compositor and had no equivalent at the linotype keyboard. The newspapers did not care. The linotype produced 1,000 lines per hour. A hand compositor produced perhaps 60. The judgment that lived in the hand compositor's craft was not measurable in lines per hour. So it was not measured. By 1950, hand composition survived in 2 places. Fine press printing, the small workshops that produced limited edition books for collectors who wanted something that a linotype could not produce. The slightly irregular impression of handset type on dampened paper, the weight of the ink in the letter forms, the quality that printers called bite. And commercial job work, small print shops producing handbills and business cards and letterheads for local clients who needed short runs that the economics of machine composition could not justify. In both places, the men doing the work were old. Their apprentices were not learning hand composition, they were learning to operate machines. By 1980, a compositor who could set justified type by hand at production speed was a specialist employed by fewer than 100 workshops in the English-speaking world. By 2000, the number had fallen further. Today, in cities that once employed thousands of hand compositors, you could count the practitioners on 2 hands. There is a thing that happened in every composing room that no one thought to document until it was almost gone. At the end of a print run, the compositor distributed his type. He took the set lines apart, letter by letter, and returned each sort to its correct compartment in the case. He did it without looking. His hands knew where every letter lived. The redistribution of a full galley of type took minutes. Each sort went home by feel, dropping into the correct compartment with a sound that the compositor did not consciously hear because it had been the background of his working life for 20 years. When the last-hand compositor retired from the last commercial composing room still using handset type, he took that sound with him. It has not been heard in a working context since. The cases are in museums now, the sorts are in their compartments, someone has arranged them neatly for display. But the hands that knew where each one lived without looking are gone. Find an old book. Not a modern paperback, an old book. A book printed before 1900 if you can find one. A Victorian novel, a 19th century history, a family Bible that has been passed down through enough generations that the cover is worn smooth at the corners. Open it to any page. Look at the text closely, not at the words, at the letters themselves. Each letter sits very slightly differently on the baseline than the letter next to it. The impression of the type in the paper, because old printing pressed type into dampened paper rather than laying ink on its surface, is slightly deeper in some letters than others. The spacing between words varies by fractions of a point from line to line. None of that is error. All of it is the hand of the man who set it. He read every word on that page before you did. He held every letter in his hand before it became language. His name is not in the book, but he is in every line of it. Find an old book or newspaper in your home and look at the type the way this video described. Tell me what you found in the comments.